second to go for the win. He got it. The Cougars win it. Number one remains number one. Cougars reset. Jackson again finds it. And the Houston Cougars go from the first four out to the Sweet 16.
Stick it in your pipe and smoke it, baby.
Yes! Welcome to the Scott and Holo podcast, back here talking all things Houston Cougars, as we always do, a little earlier than usual on a Tuesday night. The sporting schedule finally allows us to record in what I think is our probably most ideal time of the week to talk a super action-packed week that was, week that will be. My word tonight, guys, is gratitude, because I really do love when kind of the winter and spring sports seasons meet. Like, it's a lot of podcasting work, but as a sports fan, believe it or not, we don't view everything entirely through the lens of the weekly podcast that we've all been doing to some degree for the last 9 to 10 years. But it is really cool to be like, oh yeah, we have like a little softball this week. We got baseball coming back this weekend. We've got men's basketball in full swing coming off. No biggie, your 10th straight win against the Cincinnati Bearcats, something that just doesn't feel entirely real, even though factually. It to be correct, Dustin, back all three of us together. How you doing, bud?
I'm doing well. I'm excited to be talking to you guys. I'd be like 5% more excited about all the sports you were talking about if the forecast for this weekend looked a little better in Houston, if I liked our chances of getting as many of these bat and ball games in as I would like to this weekend. So we'll have to see how that goes, but excited about big Cougar basketball win, some big games coming up, and excited to be here chatting with you guys.
Bobby, how you doing, friend?
I'm good, man. I'm good. It's another week. We got a big retail holiday coming up this weekend, so yay for work for me. That means gainful employment for me. So, yeah, overall doing pretty well.
I was going to say, you're part of the two groups of people that have any kind of, like, I guess, President's Day having any effect on what they do. You and federal contractors, without giving away my day job. I am not a federal contractor, but I deal with a fair amount of people who are federal or federal adjacent in what they do, which I had to be reminded, like, oh yeah, by the way, like, one of my clients just like, yeah, like, our accounting office is closed because it's President's Day. And I was just like, oh yeah, there's a President's Day. And I just remember various random, just like mattress bill, President's Day sale. Yep. Really just want to get a deal on a Sealy Posturepedic. Shout out to you, U.S. presidents. Get this back on track here. Talking Houston Cougars, got to mention at the top, of course, like we always do. Please support our friends at the 1012 Network, at TN12 Network, wherever you do social media, the 1012 podcast, and many other great Big 12 sister podcasts that we are affiliated with. Of course, we'd love if you don't already, like a number of you do, if you'd support our show financially by going to patreon.com/shpodcast. Of course, going to mention our friends Charlie Hustle, had a great weekend as a Kansas City brand and somebody or brand that has a lot of like Chiefs affiliated stuff, which that was one of the things that really stood out to me when we first got contact with Charlie Hustle. It's just like, man, these guys do a lot of stuff with like the Chiefs, which again, like right now, not a bad NFL franchise to have some connection to. Going through a bit of a renaissance, it certainly seems like as a football team. So big congrats to them on their Chiefs winning the Super Bowl. And you can congratulate yourself, Cougar fans, by if you haven't done so already, or if you've done so but are thinking maybe I could use a little bit more apparel in my collection, check it out. Charlie Hustle's absolutely fantastic Houston Cougar collection of wearables, crew neck shirts, hoodies. If you want a cool design, Cougar basketball, Cougar sports generally, Charlie Hustle's got it. Bobby's wearing one of my personal favorites. I am not wearing it right this moment, but it is one of my mainstays here in the colder months of the year. The red Cougars crew neck, really simple, really good, and I think very importantly, really comfortable. Of course, you just by listening to this show, whether you're a Cougar fan or just an interested observer, you can, on all of Charlie Hustle's fantastic wearables, use our promo code SHP15, that's SHP15, and save 15% off any Charlie Hustle order that you are treating yourself or treating those in your life to making. So that's charliehustle.com, vintage made fresh. Guys, let's talk some Houston Cougar men's basketball. I think we got to lead with a Cougar team that had, and I'm going to talk about this in a second. I think a team that had significantly fewer stakes, significantly fewer things on the line with this game than the opponent, the team that you were going to this weekend. This game, I don't think I'm being arrogant or unfair in saying this game had a lot more, I think, in terms of positive impact or secondary benefit from winning to the Cincinnati Bearcats than the Houston Cougars. And yet here we are on Tuesday night talking about a Cougar win that wasn't necessarily easy to get to point A to point B on. It was a roller coaster, if you will, a game that refused to truly let you relax at any point until about, I think, the final handful of seconds of the game. But nonetheless, I think just a really satisfying Cougar win, guys.
Yeah, we knew it was a game that was going to be really tough. We knew it was kind of one of those any win by any margin is a good win type of games. And basically any Big 12 game you play on the road, I think that's clearly the case, especially, if you're Houston and you don't play on the road at Oklahoma State or West Virginia. I think and even West Virginia has beaten some teams. So, I mean, at this point, really, no such thing as a bad Big 12 road win, especially one against a Cincinnati team that, has, like we mentioned, has given every team that they've played a tough game. Like no one has beaten them by more than 5 on the year. Houston still didn't do it. Maybe Iowa State will do it tonight. They're playing right now. I don't know. But no, right. Yeah, you mentioned the just crazy game of runs. Houston 17-4 to start the game. At one point, the Bearcats had a 28-8 run over the end of the first half, the beginning of the second. Just as it was looking like Cincinnati might be taking the game over, Houston responded with a 19-3 run. Houston had a 10-point lead with under 4 minutes to go, only for Cincinnati to rally again, get within one possession multiple times, including the closing seconds when it was a 3-point game. It looked like Cincinnati might be able to force a steal in the backcourt or get a 10-second call, but then Houston got it up to Juwan Roberts for the uncontested dunk to salt this one away. And I thought it was fitting that Wani got the dunk to steal it because he was fantastic in this one. 20 points on 10 of 15 shooting. Only one free throw attempt because nobody ever fouls Juwan Roberts. It's remarkable. I don't know how it happens, but the man takes a bunch of shots inside, lots of contact, never fouled. It's remarkable. 8 rebounds in this one as well for Wani. 4 of those rebounds on the offensive glass, which was a huge key for Houston. I thought they were going to need, I mentioned in the preview, I thought they're going to need to get their extra shots via turnovers in this one because Cincinnati has been one of the best rebounding teams in the country on the year, but Houston went into their own building, kicked their butts on the glass, +8 in offensive rebounds and +8 in second chance points in a game that you won by 5 points. So despite Cincinnati's impressive overall team size, Houston +16 points in the paint in this one as well. So really impressed with the win for Houston, especially the way that they went in there and just kind of played bully ball and out-toughed a tough team in their own building.
Yeah, for me, you pointed out the big one for me was Wani, right? 10 of 15, 20 points. I don't know how comfortable I am with Wani taking 15 shots, right? I don't know. But look, if you're
by now, you got to be pretty comfortable, right?
What I was going to say is if you're going to shoot 66% on those 15 shots, take 15. I'm cool. You could take 20 if you're going to shoot 66%. Big concern, not that I'm one to pick nits in this game, but a little concerning shooting 18% from beyond the arc, going 3 of 16. Don't love that if we're trying to find something from this game, but we said it would be a defensive knockdown drag out fight. And it was, right? Both teams, to your point, Dustin, went extended periods without scoring. And we thought that would happen. And it was definitely a game of haymakers. We call them the runs, it was a game of runs, things like that. But you came out, you threw your best shot at them and they came back. They withstood the pressure, came back, put it back on you, had that big run at the end of the first half. What was it? What did you say, Dustin? 28-8
over the
28-8. They put that on you and you kind of had to take it. And 1 2/3 arena. I refuse to call it 5/3. It's 1 2/3 arena. Was absolutely popping, and it was just insane. That atmosphere was great. Obviously, it's not going to be Fog Allen or something like that. But Sam and I were kind of talking about this. I think yesterday, maybe the day before, that we were talking about how we're glad we're not going to Lubbock. That's a completely different thing here. That is because we were talking about it after the game last night, and we were like, man, we're really glad we don't have to go to Lubbock. And I said, who's been playing tough at home? UCF. And Sam goes, one of the good things is that we've played there before. The guys have been in that arena. They've won in that arena when it's popping, when you're one of the top teams in the country. Same thing happened in Cincy, and I could see that atmosphere looked insane at Cincy, and it was definitely a game where you could tell it's not a make or break game for them, but a win in that game almost puts them in the tournament without any question, right? Gets them off the bubble, does all that. Now, is a loss to Houston going to be the thing that kicks them off the bubble or something like that? Not necessarily, but if they win that game, that's a huge win for them, and the atmosphere showed it, and the guy showed up. I've said this to Sam. and I may have said it to you as well, Dustin, this is a team that looks like they can take teams' best shots, and that's what you need in March.
Yeah, the announced attendance of this one, 12,715, was the largest since he renovated Fifth Third Arena during the 2017-2018 season. And knowing that fan base, and I was there in the building in 2019 for their regular season finale, it was 12,715 butts and seats, and that is a really loud arena. I would say before I went to Fog Allen, that was probably the loudest arena that I had seen a game in prior to that. That is a really good basketball fan base. I mean, that's to, to give us some credit. Like the years that Cincy was just this absolute indomitable force, we were largely, winning 9 to 13 games a year. So U of H doesn't have the backbone of Cincy just being this incredible basketball program for so many years, but that's a great basketball fan base. And I'm glad, if nothing else, that this game has the juice from Cincy being, I think, the best team they've had in several years, certainly since Mick Cronin's last year. Agree with you, Bobby, that I think this is a team that really, like I said at the top, needed this game more than the Cougs needed. I mean, if the Cougs lose this game, maybe you're not as nailed on of a 1 seed right now. But I mean, it's a true road loss in a quad 1 situation. Would like to have it, but not the worst thing to necessarily lose it. Whereas I think if Cincy won this game, I think they're on a lot more people's last 4 in, or maybe even, depending on how much the win is valued, last 4 buys necessarily. Like I think that's the level of motivation there. And yet that the Cougars went out there and, yes, wasn't easy, wasn't necessarily the most straightforward road to get there, but that this team led for a pretty good chunk of regulation against this team, I think, with their best home atmosphere in a good long while. That's really cool. And that just tells you, I think, the toughness of these guys. My favorite stat for this one, guys, I want to make sure I attribute it properly. It's courtesy of Chad Brendel, the owner of the Cincy site, BearcatJournal.com. Jamal Shead missed 17 shots that weren't immediately followed by a dead ball on Saturday. Guys, out of those 17 misses, U of H grabbed the offensive board 10 times. That's unreal, and it kind of tracks because I remember from watching this one in real time to looking at the box score after, my first reaction was that Jamal Shead's shooting line looked a lot worse than I expected. But I mean, I guess considering so many of those misses were rebound, it didn't feel like he was missing as many as he did. And I mean, you can never say the offensive rebounding effort is about one guy, but you both have said it. Wani Roberts, I think, heart and soul of this team. As always, Wani and Javier Francis both had 4. Malik Wilson had 3. Even an off day, Damian Dunn gave you a couple as well. And yeah, you can't overstate the kind of game that Roberts had. And I think it's long past time to put him in the pantheon of really, really great Kelvin Sampson era U of H players. I mean, right now, by necessity, this program has been bringing in a higher rated level of recruit, whether via high school or the portal. Necessary when you're a Big 12 program. And it doesn't really appear that Kelvin Sampson is compromising on culture and bringing those guys in. But it's still really cool to have, to see the bedrock of this program is still tough as nails, maybe somewhat overlooked 3-star type guys like Roberts. And we talked about the Cincy team in the preview, so much size on paper, 3 different rotation or starting big men listed 6'11" or taller. And yet those 3 guys, them referencing Ben, Ogo, Lockett, and Reynolds, they combined for 2 fewer rebounds than Wani and Javier each had on their own. And this is a good rebounding team. Like even after this game, Cincy's top 10 nationally in offensive rebounding and top 30 in opponent offensive rebounding. By any metric, they're really good at getting and preventing opponents from getting offensive rebounds, and U of H just so thoroughly dominated that aspect of the game in Cincy's building with a guy listed at 6'7" who has a bad knee. Like, that's cool, man. That's a culture win.
Yeah, one of you tweeted it. I don't know who. I have an idea of who.
It's always a good mystery.
But me and whichever one of you tweeted it, reaction when Wani Roberts does anything positive.
Like Taylor Swift or one of her friends.
Yeah, that was Blake Lively.
Like,
was it like one of her friends? Yeah, that's absolutely Blake Lively. Mm-hmm. So,
put that on Blake Lively's resume. One of her friends.
I genuinely didn't know this. This was not me trying to talk shit about Blake Lively. I genuinely spaced that it was Blake Lively in that picture.
Yeah. So anyways,
sorry, Bobby. Continue.
So anyways, Wani Roberts. I don't know if he will ever become my favorite Cougar basketball player ever. It's tough to beat Fabian White, but he's making a case. I love when Wani gets the ball. He's down in the post, and we just let Wani cook. Like you said, Sam, it was a culture move. Wani is the heart and soul of this team when it comes to the culture of this team, and it's beyond exciting to see him, watch him over the couple of years take that next step with his offensive game as well.
Yeah, I wanted to circle back to something you said earlier, Bobby, which is the 3-point shooting being off in this one. And to me, 3-point shooting in basketball, I mean, it's kind of like a pitcher having their best stuff or not in a baseball game. You just can't control it. Some days you got your best stuff, some days you don't. Obviously, some teams are better 3-point shooters than others, but whether you have a good, average, or bad shooting game relative to your baseline, I think is just kind of one of those random things. So if anything, playing in the atmosphere like that, where, like Sam said, the other team had so much more to play for, had the crowd behind their backs, and you came out there and kind of didn't have your fastball, so to speak, in terms of the 3-point shot to still get the win. I thought makes this even more of an impressive culture win for the Cougars. I can't believe we are like almost done talking about this game and no one has talked about Malik Wilson yet, because he was so
I had a note if you guys did mention it, but
21 minutes off the bench with Aldrich Cryer in foul trouble for a lot of this one. Wilson did a little bit of everything: 7 rebounds, 3 key steals, 4 points, 2 assists. Just broadly played a lot of very good defense. And kind of the concern that we had with Terrence Arsenault going down is who's your guy that just comes off the bench when you need some minutes, doesn't need the ball in his hands necessarily, but is not going to do something bad with it when it is in his hands, and just plays really, really good defense on the other end, and just kind of makes 3 or 4 plays that are just maybe don't show up real big in the box score, but just end up being really big in the course of this game. And that was Malik Wilson in the second half of this one. And he's someone who's obviously just super veteran guy, just second year in the program after not playing last year. So for him, to finally, after all this time and effort that he's put into this program over the last couple of years, to finally, I think, have a real breakout game. I was really excited for him and was really happy that he picked this game to have a breakout one, because I think Houston probably doesn't win this game if Malik Wilson doesn't step up in a big way the way he did.
Yeah.
I was just going to add, like everything you said, Wilson, I think you kind of covered it there. I wanted to also point out that Wilson and JoJo Tugler both played such a big chunk of that 19-3 run where U of H turned that 38-31 deficit, where early second half, it really looked like this team was on the ropes. The crowd was ravenous. Like, Cincy had just so overturned that really good U of H start, and that you were able to play so much good basketball with a guy who we weren't even sure was going to be on the team this year back in the summer, and a true freshman. Like those guys, I think we've said it a lot here, culture guys right there. And it's so cool. And I realized, like, different, 50-year guy versus freshman, like obviously JoJo Tugler, we're not seeing a fully realized college player yet, but both two really tough dudes who, like, you'd want to win a basketball game with. Again, just want to say this also, guys, I know I said at the top, winning 10 straight head-to-head against Cincinnati and 3 straight at Fifth Third is crazy. Like, I would have never imagined that 8 or 9 years ago. And I realize this isn't Cincinnati's best era of basketball, but I'll just go back a little bit. I remember during the 2017-2018 season, we played Cincy on the road. I think that was the year they played away from home because they were having their own arena renovations. I think we both did our respective arena renovations during the same season. U of H got out to this big first half lead against Cincinnati, and Cincy was able to still come back and eventually win that game by double digits. I went back and looked. They won 80-70 and led by 13 with like a minute left. Really back then, Cincy felt inevitable. Like, U of H would always have some mental block that kept them from regularly beating that opponent. Guys, we're the inevitable team now. Like, and we've been for quite some time, and I have to kind of pinch myself because that's really cool. All right. Are we all done with any serious-ish analysis of the game? Because I have 2 very dumb, tangentially related points to the game that I want to hit real quick before we end it.
I just wanted to kind of, underscore what you said about JoJo Tugler. Played 20 minutes in this one with a lot of more than average due to, I think, partially to Javier being in foul trouble, which, by the way, I don't know if we need to hire a witch doctor or whatever the hell, but we made like one comment about
I did, and that's my bad.
About is pretty good at not getting in foul trouble this year, and he said like 3 out of his last 4 games or something gets in foul trouble. I don't know what we need to do to undo that jinx, but my goodness,
we're willing to do it.
I'll find Sage.
I'm open to ideas.
Did you just say you'll burn Sage?
Yes, I said I'll burn Sage. I'll do whatever it takes, Bobby.
Okay, I'm in.
Whatever it takes. Hit my 2 dumb things really quick.
Yeah, let's do it.
Guys, if I have to hear Fran Fischel say one more time, Jamal Shedd's mother committed to Kelvin Sampson before Jamal did. Guys, I'm going to fucking destroy my flat screen like one of those staged videos where a sports fan pretends he's so mad his team lost, he destroys the flat screen. Over this guy. Can we please have that weirdo Mark Adams back on our broadcast like we did for AAC games? Yeah, I liked Mark Adams. I mean, it's a champagne problem because Fran Fischel is only getting put on big matchups, and we have lots of big matchups, but guy, come on, get a second anecdote about Jamal Shed. I don't want to listen to this every time. Nothing against Jamal Shed. Nothing against his mother. There's probably lots of good Jamal Shed's mom anecdotes out there. You just go, she committed to Kelvin Sampson before Jamal did. Bobby, did you know that?
Hey, Sam. I don't know if you know this. Damian Dunn kicked out of his first Houston practice.
Yeah, also
he did?
that one too. Hey,
was he not ready for what Kelvin Sampson demands of his players, Dustin? Interesting.
Okay, let me ask you this. Would you rather hear that or that our punter, Dane Roy, is 31 and he used to sell ice cream?
The Dane Roy
which one was used
honestly.
more?
The Dane Roy one just makes me laugh. Nothing against the Jamal Shed anecdote, but it just does. It's not laughing anecdote. It's like, oh, okay, that's mildly interesting the first time I heard it, and then just like progressively, just like a second anecdote. All right, my second dumb point here that I'll preface by saying this isn't a substantive criticism of Cincinnati or its basketball program. I think this is a good team who I really hope could do enough with this remaining schedule to get into the field of 68. I like the fan base generally too. I like that what you tweeted, Dustin, that this game is now a Big 12 matchup. I'll just say this. I don't know what Wes Miller's deal is, but I don't like it. His tucked in shirts, his little pouty facial expressions, getting a technical after a completely correct call, and then putting himself in a position where he couldn't there were some calls in the second half where if I was Wes Miller, I would not have been thrilled about it.
Yep.
And he couldn't argue it because he got a stupid tech like less than 10 minutes into the game. Just like the little collapse in the pouty faces. It's like Mick Cronin with like less juice, which again is just like a really tough thing. Again, not a real criticism. It's just a stupid little observation that I'm saying at the very end of our talk about the game because it's much less important than everything that I think the three of us have talked about prior. But that's it. I'm sorry.
I do kind of see Wes Miller as like, what if Mick Cronin was a little younger and tried a little too hard?
Exactly. Mick Cronin without Mick Cronin's actual like success as a college head coach.
It's like Step Brothers when he's like, I just want to punch you in your face. And he's like, is there anything I can do about that? Nope, it's just your face. It's like, all right.
All right, that's all I got, guys.
All right.
So up next for the Houston Cougars, 2 home games against 2 teams that Houston played to a dead heat in the closing seconds on the road. Starting with home match versus UT Austin on Saturday. The Cougars will, of course, be looking to complete the season sweep of the Longhorns after already beating them up in Austin, a 76-72 final in overtime. The Longhorns, one of only 5 teams on the year to score at least 1 full point per possession against Houston in a game, but nobody has yet done so in the Fertitta Center. Max Asmus and Dylan Mitchell were especially impressive at getting and making quality shots in that first matchup. Curious to see what the Cougars are going to do against them this time around, but I think either way, this is still a good offensive Longhorn team. I think Houston should expect to have to score some points. Shed, Sharp, Cryer, and Roberts all had 13 plus in Austin, and I think my ideal is seeing a kind of similar offensive balance against a team that, I think Houston will do better defensively, but you're still going to have to score some points to beat this team.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, like you said, you are going to have to put up some points. Now, one thing that gets me a little excited about that is we just played a really good defensive team in Cincinnati, still put up 68, sorry. It just slipped my mind all of a sudden. And we had some stretches and we looked good in Austin, and playing at the Fertitta Center is very tough. As much as Big 12 Twitter wants to give us a hard time about our fan base and all this kind of stuff, the Cougs just show up. The Cougs just show up at Fertitta Center. And if we played you close on the road at your place, it's going to be interesting to see how they can bring it back to Houston and still have the same performance that they had before. So very exciting. Hope we get the sweep. But like you said, they're one of the only schools that have gotten 1 point per possession, but doing it in the Fertitta Center is a different beast. So I am pretty excited, and hopefully the Cougs can pull this one off.
Yeah, there's still kind of a weird enigma, hard to say that I thought, of a team. I think if you want some good comps about how the Longhorns have done against U of H-like teams, they played 4 teams besides the Cougs. Well, against 4 teams, including the Cougs, in the KenPom National Top 100 currently. They're 1-3 in those games, with the 1 win coming at home over Baylor and a Tyrese Hunter make. I think it was at the buzzer, Dustin. Did I remember that right?
Did you mean top 10? I think you said top 100. I think they played
Top,
more than four.
I meant top 20 actually. I don't know
Top
why
20?
I said top 100.
I'm sorry. I was so distracted by that. I was not paying attention. I did not hear the question that you asked.
Reset. Ken Palm National top 20 teams there, 1-3 against them, including the previous game in Austin. Against the Cougars, the one win was a very close one. I believe a Tyrese Hunter make it the buzzer against Baylor. At home, Dustin, I figure if any one of the three of us had potentially like tuned in for that, it would have been you. Either way, a very late make. If you go for the entire season, they're 1-5 against those teams, which including non-conference losses to UConn and Marquette. They also lost to a bad West Virginia team about a month ago in Morgantown, though, to be fair, Kansas did as well. It doesn't mean they're incapable of winning the Fertitta Center. I mean, when these teams played in Austin, it was clear that the Longhorns had a good plan for getting Max A. Smith shots. Dylan Mitchell, like you said, Dustin, had a monster game, which has kickstarted kind of a nice last 4 games for him. I think for me, the X factor of this one's going to be Dylan Dessou, whether the Cougars can keep him from putting up really nice offensive numbers. He had 14 against the Cougs, but did it maybe not the most efficient way possible in a close margin game. I think that really helped. His lowest point total in the last 7 games was actually against the Cougs in Austin. You'll need him not to go off in this one to, I think, feel pretty comfortable about your chances of winning. And U of H has played 13 games at the Fertitta Center to date. The closest margin of win, guys, what do you think that is? All season. I had a surprisingly hard time like
UCF, right?
That's it.
Mm-hmm.
UCF by 15.
Yep.
I think this game will be closer than that, but I do think the Cougars will win this one. I do like the Cougars' chances at home, even though the Longhorns have been kind of hot and cold. They've been pretty cold at home, but they've had some, I think, nice road results, but I would still say those nice road results came against opponents who were a cut below the Cougars. With all respect to Oklahoma and TCU, both teams are projected in the field of 68, but I don't think I'm being unfair in saying that those teams are a tier below U of H, at least in the current season. So not taking the Longhorns lightly here. I hope it's a really good crowd for Fertitta Center, but I think the Cougars can get the regular season sweep in this one.
If you hold to Dessou to something like 14 points on inefficient shooting, like you take that.
That's what you got to do. That's the blueprint.
You're not holding them to 6 or something. Like, so you're not that kind of player. But yeah, no, only other thing for me that I'm going to be real interested in is just forcing turnovers. This is a UT team that on the year has been a little bit sloppy with the ball. Only 10 turnovers was Houston able to force in 45 minutes up in Austin. The Longhorns turned around and immediately had much worse turnover games against TCU and Iowa State in their next 2 games. So hoping to see that in the Fertitta Center be more of a factor. Houston, I think, maybe being a little bit more aggressive defensively with the home crowd behind them. So we got that game, and then just 2 days later, Houston will be hosting Iowa State on Monday evening. Obviously, a revenge game for Houston after taking the loss up in Ames, and a huge game for the Big 12 title race. Iowa State, as I mentioned earlier, playing TCU or at Cincinnati rather as we speak, up 8 at the half. But coming into today, the only Big 12 team besides Houston with only 1 conference loss. So very good chance that these teams are either like tied for first or one of them's in first and the other one's, a game back, something like that when they face off on Monday. And this is an Iowa State team that's playing really good ball right now after losing by a bunch in Provo. They've won 5 of their last 6. The only loss coming on the road at Baylor by 2 points. That streak includes road wins at TCU and UT Austin and a home win over Kansas. So, what I think could be a crucial X factor, guys, for this one is that, yes, this is 2 games in 3 days for both teams, but it's 2 home games in 3 days for Houston. Iowa State plays in Ames on Saturday and then it has to be in Houston on Monday. Not a real easy turnaround. So, with that and, the revenge factor here for Houston wanting to make right their loss the first time around, I'd like to think that Houston has a good chance with this one coming at home.
Yeah, I would just say, I imagine I'm really excited about because I think if nothing else, between now and when these teams last matched up previously, I think Iowa State's really shown themselves to be not just like a good right side of the bubble level team, but a team genuinely in the hunt to win the conference regular season title right now, a team that's top 10 right now in net and KenPom in the polls. What'd you say?
No, sorry, I was saying and the AP polls. I didn't realize you were taking a dramatic pause and you were already getting there on your own. My bad.
And again, this is an opponent who I think, barring complete collapse, and I'm sorry if this ends up being a jinx on your team of second allegiance, Dustin, I think we're talking about a team I'm really confident is not going to have a number lower than 4 next to their name come Selection Sunday. Again, I think one of the very small number of teams out there you could say create more havoc defensively than the Cougars. The Cyclones lead the Big 12 in steal percentage, right ahead of the Cougars, top 75 nationally in block percentage as well. I don't think the Clones are as good at forcing misses as the Cougs, but I think when you force as much chaos as they do, it really does even things out. And we saw it play out in Ames when Iowa State started out on that 14-0 run, and it felt like the Cougars were kind of playing in a hole the rest of that game. Yeah, I think really the head of the snake, the tip of the spear, whatever you want to call it defensively, is that combo of Taman Lipsey and Keyshawn Gilbert. Both guys can also create with the ball in their hands to differing degrees as well. Lipsey is 5th in the country in steal rate. Keyshawn Gilbert's top 75 in free throw rate on a team that has been really good at getting to the charity stripe. I don't think any one player's been better at that than Gilbert this season. And that's going to be the big challenge, I think, for the Cougs in this one, not letting Iowa State win this one at the line, or I guess more specifically doing what you need to do on the offensive end to take advantage of, the team of the Cougs that fouls a fair amount. I think it also behooves the Cougars to do what they need to do to take advantage of a Cyclone team that, like them, also, I think it plays a physical brand of defense that often lends itself to sending an opponent to the free throw line a fair amount. And I think another challenge is going to be doing a better job on Milan Momcilovic. I mean, he's not a 20-plus points a night guy yet in his career, but he's a 6'8" matchup problem. He hit, I think, basically the deciding shot when his teams last met previously. And you noted it, Dustin, the quick turnaround between U of H's Saturday game and this one. Iowa State coming off hosting Texas Tech and then coming all the way to Houston. This game, in a lot of ways, I mean this most complimentary way possible, really reminds me of the U of H Cincy games the last couple of years Mick Cronin was there in the American, in that both of these teams are two really tough defensively minded outfits who can play rock fighty basketball and has serious conference title implications. I think as someone who really enjoys that kind of basketball, I can't wait for Monday night, guys.
Yeah, it's going to be a super exciting game. I think the key for U of H is going to be scoring more, obviously, right? But scoring with more people, right? You look at the first matchup, Manuel Sharp leads with 20, Jamal Shed has 14, and then everyone else had 19 combined. You're going to have to see somebody other than those two. I mean, Francis had 3, Wani only had 6 on 3 of 7 shooting. So it's just going to be, can you get more scoring than what you got in the first game? I mean, kind of looking back at the box score, I thought U of H shot terribly in that game. They shot the exact same as Iowa State. So like you said, Sam, it is a knockdown, drag out defensive game. We just had one of those, and this one's going to be a ton of fun to watch. Hopefully the Cougs can get the revenge. But the thing I'm looking for is, can we get more scoring, more depth scoring than we did the last time? If you can hold Iowa State to 62, right? You held them to 57 last time and still lost. If you can hold them to 62, I don't see the Cougs not getting over that number. So it's going to be, can you keep Iowa State where they were, and can you get more scoring than you got the last game? And I think starting with a bucket in the first 10 minutes, unlike what we had the first game, would certainly help that.
I was going to say, the loss up in Ames was really about 2 things for me. It was about the slow start, and it was about the turnovers. It was Iowa State having a double-digit lead after about 5 seconds, and Houston just kind of, chopping away at it the rest of the way and only kind of barely catching up, just in time to tie it up and then lose on a heartbreaking, almost buzzer beater there by Momcilovic. And then also Houston committing an uncharacteristic 16 turnovers. And obviously a big part of that is, like Sam said, Iowa State's as good as anybody in the country at forcing turnovers. But, we saw this Houston team commit turnovers en masse in the first half, turnovers at seemingly every critical juncture as they tried to rally throughout the game. And this is still, like I said, it's a damn good Iowa State team, and they're still as good as anybody at forcing turnovers. But with this game, again, coming in the friendly confines of the Fertitta Center, with Kelvin Sampson having seen what Iowa State did to his team the first time and getting to coach them up in before the rematch, is Houston going to have 6 turnovers in this game? No, they'll probably have more than that, but I don't think it's going to be the 16 that they had last time either. Yeah,
I have a hard time believing Jamal Shed's going to have 5 turnovers again. That's just not what he does. Like, let's just be honest. Jamal Shed's not a guy who turns the ball over like that. And we had uncharacteristic turnovers. We had passes that were not even to a target. We had 1 or 2 10 seconds, right? We saw a little bit of pressure from Iowa State, and we had a couple of 10 seconds. Just like uncharacteristic. Again, we're not going to have 6. That's a great point, Dustin, but I don't know if we're going to have 16, and I just don't see Jamal Shed coming out, putting up 5 turnovers again. And Jamal's turnovers felt like they all came early. Like once the Cougs kind of settled down in that game, we started to chip away at it, but we never got settled in. And that was one of our first big Big 12 atmospheres. It was a crazy, rambunctious crowd. So
first time everyone not named LJ Cryer was playing in that building.
Yeah. So I just feel like it's going to be a little bit different, and that building has some weird voodoo about it. And so, yeah, I don't, if the Cougs just clean it up, it's not even that they need to shoot better. They just need to clean everything up a little bit, get a little better on the margins. And that could be the difference in this game.
Yeah. I was going to say like that. You guys kind of mentioned it, but we talk a lot about how this team is so good at forcing turnovers, but kind of overlooked is how good they've been at taking care of the ball outside the game against Iowa State. So yeah, very, very critical to success. Top 10 on top 10 matchup. Yeah, the big ESPN Monday night game, guys. This is the stage this program has deserved.
Yep.
Absolutely.
This is why you joined the Big 12.
Yep.
All right, guys. That's it for men's hoops. Let's before we get into all the other in-season sports, let's do our final season preview of the 2023-24 athletics season. Cougar baseball, as always, the last ones to get going. And like Cougar softball, this is another program that isn't super far removed from having success, but is far enough removed that there's some clear pressure to get this team back to the NCAA postseason. You'll remember the 5-year stretch from 2014 to 2018. Houston went to 4 regionals, hosted 2 of them, went to a super regional, won 3 AAC regular season titles and 2 tournament titles. Unfortunately, in the 5 seasons since then, Houston has been to 0 regionals and won 0 conference titles of any kind. And the good news is that after bottoming out in 2021, the last 2 seasons have been respectable, going 37 and 24 overall 2 years ago, 36 and 23, including a 17 and 6 mark in the American Athletic Conference, which used to mean something. Damn it. It used to mean something if you went 17 and 6 in the American, but unfortunately that conference has been devolving into a pretty mediocre baseball conference, and Houston's non-conference strength of schedule the last couple of years has not nearly been enough to do its part to make up the difference. So even those relatively nice win totals were not enough to have Houston in any kind of consideration for a regional in either year. And one thing I can say with confidence, guys, if Houston wins 36 or 37 games this year, their strength of schedule isn't going to keep them out of a regional. The Big 12 will see to that. Tough conference. Houston was picked 9th in the official Big 12 preseason poll. D1 Baseball picked Houston 8th and said that the conference would get 7 bids. So I think there is a perception that the Cougars will once again be kind of like wrong side of the bubble or just outside of bubble consideration as they have been the last 2 years. And I think this team, like we're going to talk about, this team absolutely has a chance. This team has the pieces to make a regional and prove people wrong. I think it's also totally fair for outside observers to be in believe it when I see it mode with this team. D1 Baseball had them, keep an eye on tier, whatever. But I mean, heck, I'm a huge fan. The first Cougar sporting event I ever went to was a Cougar baseball game. I followed this team to dozens of stadiums, and I am in believe it when I see it mode with this team. So I think it's fair, even with a lot of talent on this roster and a lot of, I think, potential reasons to be optimistic. I think it's fair that the perception is still like, okay, you got to go prove it now that you're back to the NCAA postseason.
I wanted to add something here. I promise this actually connects to Cougar baseball. I remember this is back in 2017, Dustin. We were respectively the best man and a groomsman at a wedding of some dear friends of ours, one of whom is a Cougar alum, during the 2017 regional that U of H was hosting. And I was able to catch the last couple of games, but I remember almost not going and thinking to myself, well, we're going to be in these regularly enough that, I guess I could miss this year. And in the 7 years since then, we've only been to one since, none of them at the University of Houston. I didn't have gray hairs in my beard back then. I do now. That's how long it's been since we've made the NCAA postseason. And there are reasons to feel positively about what this team could be. I think you listed them off, the most general terms. Like we're going to talk about some players that I think we're very positive on. There's a case to be made. This team isn't going back to the NCAA postseason, but I am like you, and I would guess I'm like Bobby as well. I am now firmly in believe it when I see it mode. And I think this team has some interesting pieces. I also think this team has a lot of the same questions that the past several weren't able to ultimately answer and ended up being a big part of the reason why those teams didn't end up being close to NCAA caliber, because really it's not as if like, oh, you've been getting on the bubble and getting really close. I mean, the 2019 team, I will give Todd Whitten credit, was, I think, unfairly excluded from the postseason field that year. You haven't really been that close any year since then. Even though I would agree with you that the team has certainly, after pretty much bottoming out in 2021, been noticeably better and I think noticeably more watchable these last 2 seasons. You were an NCAA team either these past seasons. I think when Todd came on with us during the summer, he said the team had to win some crazy amount of games. It was like, 45 or 46 against last year's schedule to be postseason caliber. I mean, just like hasn't really been there. And that I think has been a program that, if not in the tournament every year, has been in the tournament in the postseason quite often. It just hasn't happened recently. So I think that's some of the same questions, but I think also still some reasons for optimism. I'm not going into this fully negative. I'm more positive this week than I was for a lot of the softball preview. I will say that.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't add much to what you guys are saying. It definitely is prove it mode. We've heard the words and the hype and the preseason talk year after year, and it's kind of one of those things where you see it and you do have that optimism. You do see what happened last year and you're going, okay, this team's going to be, if they can build on this, they're going to do something. And the next logical step is you bottomed out in 2021. You got slightly better in 2022, slightly better in 23. It's now time for you to make the tournament in 2024. And we thought maybe last year was that moment where, hey, we're going to, the pitching's here, the hitting's here, everything's where we want it. And we're going to get excited a little bit. And then it just didn't happen. And so now it's that cautioned optimism where you're like, yeah, I could see it happening this year, but I could have also seen it happen last year. And I got my heart broken, and I don't want to watch until we see it. Now, the 3 of us are going to watch no matter what because we're sickos. But at the end of the day, it is, you are more optimistic than you are pessimistic about this team, but just you're going, all right, I want to see what we can actually do first. I think that's a great way to describe it.
Yeah, and we'll start with discussing this year's team by talking about the pitching staff. And really the story of Houston's decline over the past 5 years has been the story of Todd Whitting's inability to replace Frank Anderson at pitching coach. Anderson was the hire of the century when Whitting got him, but he's been the pitching coach at Tennessee now since 2017. And Terry Rooney got 4 years. I guess really, to be fair, we'll give him 3 years with COVID to prove that he wasn't the answer. And then Kyle Bunn was out after a so-so year 1, turned into a pretty disastrous year 2, at least in terms of the pitching aspect last year. So hopefully the third time is the charm, and that Sean Kenny is the guy. We talked about Kenny back when Whitting made the move, but the very in a nutshell version is that he's certainly had some good staffs in the past, and his last job was an SEC one. But the other side of that is that his admittedly very injury-ravaged staff got clobbered last year, and that's why he was on the market. So hopefully his, kind of reputation with the industry, quote unquote, is deserved. And I think the big test for him, at least the biggest test for me in terms of how good of a pitching coach is Sean Kenny, is I'm really curious to see what Paul Schmitz looks like this year. The big 6'8" German righty was a little up and down like you expect from a freshman who just moved to the States last year, but showed a lot of potential. And I think if Kenny is kind of, the as good a pitching coach as Whitting says, or as quote unquote people in the industry say, then I'd really like to see that in terms of, I'd give him a lot of credit if Paul Schmitz has a breakout sophomore season here. Definitely looking for that to hopefully happen.
I just want to add also, I think what gives me a bit more positivity is U of H brought in former MLB pitcher, former college assistant and Cougar alum, Woody Williams as the director of pitching strategy and development. He was most recently the pitching coach at UT Austin last season, where they were top 10 nationally in team ERA, or the top ERA team in the Big 12, but let go of Williams after the Horns failed to make the College World Series because they just push the fire button whenever the team doesn't almost win a championship pretty much across the board in all sports. Before that, he was a really successful assistant coach at San Jack, noted JUCO baseball power. I don't know the ins and outs of who will do what, but I just like adding Williams to the brain trust. And I want to start kind of talking about the guys who we expect to be in the weekend rotation. Jackson Jelkin is a name that we've heard a lot from the fall, a guy who wasn't on the roster last season, pitched at South Mountain Community College in the Phoenix Metro last year, had really good strikeout numbers, was good enough to be a 14th round draft pick, but elected to roll at U of H. And basically every written thing I think we've consumed about U of H baseball in the offseason has talked about him being a top of the rotation guy. So wouldn't be surprised if he's the guy who takes the mound on Friday night. And the other guy I want to mention is someone Dustin already touched on, Paul Schmitz. was really your most effective starter last year. That's a low bar, but I think it was a really impressive season. It wasn't a huge number of innings pitched because he missed a lot of the back half of the season, hurt, or I think just resting out of precaution because of an injury. But to go from playing European baseball, whatever that exists as now, to American Division I and to be a college team's most effective starter, I think that's really impressive, and it just kind of exciting to think about what he could be after a couple more seasons playing American college competition. I think that's gonna be really cool, and I think the question is like who's gonna be the third guy, probably alongside of Jelkin and Schmitz in that weekend rotation.
Yeah, for me, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, all you, Bobby. Go ahead.
Oh yeah. Yeah, you pointed out name Jackson Jelkin. He's somebody that we should be really excited about. One of the big things with Frank Anderson was he tended to tell his pitchers to pound the strike zone, right? And we have seen that kind of disappear from U of H once Frank left. And you know, you kind of look at Jackson's stats. Led his community college in strikeouts per 9, 11.66. So gotta love that. 11 strikeouts per 9 innings, 98 strikeouts over 75 and 2/3 innings. Love that as well with a 3.8. Gonna be interested to see how he transfers that into Division I, but you know, pounding the strike zone, no matter what level you're playing in. So really excited to kind of see how he is, what's going to happen with him, on Friday, Saturdays, or even Sundays, wherever they put him.
I want to mention real quick also, I was going to say, like, pitched at Nebraska as well. So isn't it his first time against D1 competition? Sorry, Des.
No, I was going to say a couple other guys that I think have the potential to join the weekend rotation alongside Schmitz and Jelkin. Alabama transfer Antoine Jean, another newcomer, started 16 games for the Crimson Tide over 3 years, had a career ERA of 3.51, and easily the toughest conference in baseball. Didn't play any last year. I don't know if there's an injury or something going on there, but if he looks,
I checked, he was hurt.
Yeah. So, but if he looks something like his previous self, you'd think he could be a big contributor. And then, another guy who's, I guess, technically a returner because he was on the roster before, but didn't really play much last year. That's Kyle Acalamedo, the big lefty, was expected to be a bell cow in the weekend rotation for Houston last year after showing some promise the year before in his first year at a JUCO ball. And he looked really good through 6 innings over 2 starts last year. But unfortunately, that's how much work he got in before suffering a season-ending injury. So like Jean, if either of those guys is back to 100%, they feel like they could slot in as that, third guy in the weekend rotation. Maybe one of them is your Sunday guy. Maybe one of them is your Tuesday guy, something like that. But I think some options up front. And then I think definitely some options in the back end of the bullpen. Two-way guy. Justin Murray was awesome in that department last year, and he's back. Jose Torrealba, who the parallels to Acalamedo southpaw, showed promise 2 years ago, first year at a JUCO, and then got injured early last year, takes a red shirt and comes back. But this, Torrealba probably more likely to be in the pen, I think, whereas Acalamedo maybe more likely to get some starts. Owen Woodward, pretty respectable in relief last year. He's back. And then another guy, Chris Stewart, I'm really intrigued by, was a stud at San Jack. Went to Austin last year, pitched for the Longhorns, had 18 Ks and 15 innings pitched up there. And then comes now to the Cougs with a decent amount of promise. And then Alex Solis, a pretty highly rated freshman, something Houston hasn't gotten a ton of lately. I'm hopeful he can contribute early on as well. So I know, like, I don't want to be mean, but I do feel like our head coach says that this is his deepest pitching staff, like, every year for the last, 6 years.
It's not mean if it's true.
That doesn't mean it's not true, but I mean, it's a lot of guys that have to kind of go out there and prove it still. But I think a lot of potential, and I think, we're going to certainly give Sean Kenny the chance to kind of prove his mettle and prove his paycheck and turn a lot of these, talented guys into even more productive college pitchers.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I could see scenarios where this is a much deeper and more effective pitching staff for all the guys you just said, Dustin, but I could also see us in 4 months coming right back here and be like, yeah, you were more reliable pitching away from potentially really being a serious NCAA tournament team. Like, I could absolutely see both happening. And what I was saying earlier was, no, it's not, you saying that is not mean if it's true, because I've seen it in every D1 baseball fall report for the last 6 years. So no, I mean, I agree.
he hypes up that staff, and this is the year we're going to pound the zone. This is the year we're going to get lots of strikeouts. This is the year where we have a team ERA of 2.2, and it just, again, it's the theme of the year is prove it. We can see on paper how it makes sense that this is going to happen, how you can get there. I can understand how you're going to say this is one of my deepest pitching rotations that I've had since I've been here. Prove it.
And kind of like we talked about with softball, we sure hope the pitching staff can pitch because this lineup looks like they're going to be able to hit again. This team has shown a lot of promise at the plate the last 2 years. We've seen 2 consecutive seasons of Houston improving in basically every offensive category. Team batting average, extra base hits, homers, stolen bases, walks, hits per game, runs per game. All of those categories have increased 2 years in a row. Last year, Houston scored 7.36 runs per game, their highest total since the Gorilla Ball era of the late 90s. And in terms of returnees, first baseman Justin Murray is the guy you got to start with. Hit 379 with 11 home runs, led the team in RBIs and slugging percentage last year. Just a huge bat in the lineup, in addition to his aforementioned late inning pitching expertise. So, Bobby, for me, getting him back for the 2024 season was the biggest recruiting coup that Whitting and staff pulled off this offseason.
Yeah, you can't replace that, right? That doesn't just come in, and that kind of production doesn't just show up and it's not that, you lose it and then you're like, oh, we just slot this new guy in and it does it perfectly. I think keeping him is equivalent of, like you said, bringing in a 5-star recruit. Between his hitting and his pitching, it's just an absolute coup to be able to keep him on the roster.
Yeah, chief among the reasons to be excited about the lineup, to have him as your locked-on starter at first base. And he came in last year from Dartmouth off a really good all Ivy League kind of season, so maybe he was a bit less surprised that he was a standout hitter. He'd been kind of with all respect to him as a college athlete, had been kind of a mediocre, innings eater guy on the mound. For him to come in and be your best hitter and your most reliable pitcher while being a plus defender, I think the only thing Justin Murray didn't do at Cougar baseball games last year was sell the popcorn. Incredible. I think among the very best of the, two-way guys this program's had, and there's been a number of very good two-way guys that have come to this program in its history. I think certainly your best since the glory days of Rainer Noble in the late 90s and early 2000s, when you kind of more regularly had guys doing what Justin Murray did. And that 2023 season is a really hard act to follow, but anything close to what he did last year against Big 12 competition, I think, is really, really impressive. I would say the second biggest reason to be excited about is another returner, your third-year starting catcher, super senior, Anthony to-ooown. His average dropped a bit from 2022, but still hit double-digit home runs, was third on the team in ribbies behind Murray, and then now playing in the pros, Zach Arnold, while also being a plus defender behind the plate. I remember he came in from Kansas with a good defensive rep, and it was kind of just okay, well, let's see what this guy can do hitting-wise, and he's been such a plus for you offensively these last 2 seasons, and I'm really excited to see what he does in his final college season as well.
Yeah, I don't know that he was a plus defender. I think he might have been a plus defender. Might have to give him 2 pluses to be fair. He is so good behind the plate. And yeah, his batting average did drop from 326 to 267 last year, but I know I was reading somewhere recently that he was real banged up. I think had a wrist thing that was just not really right all the year last year. So, and despite that, hit for more power, hit for 10 home runs after hitting for 5 his first season at U of H. So if he's healthy heading into this year, I think he is someone, him and Murray both are guys that I could see making an all Big 12 team this season. Other returnees to outfielder Cameron Nickens is back after hitting just under 300 as a freshman and hitting 310 last year as a sophomore. He's got enough size that I'd like to think he can maybe get a little even a little more pop this year, or maybe increase his walk rate would turn him into a really dangerous hitter. Alex Lopez, another veteran returnee, pesky lefty hitter who hit over 300 2 years ago before dipping a bit last year. And then Thomas Lissy is someone that the staff got 54 ABs for as a freshman last year. And then in the fall, Whitting pointed to him as someone who he thought was really ready for a big sophomore leap and thought could play a strong defensive third base. So in terms of the returnees, those 5 guys, I think, are the 5 that I would really see slotting into the lineup. And maybe not all 5 of them, because there are enough there's enough incoming talent that you imagine that even those 5, aside from probably to-ooown and Murray, are probably even going to have to battle for ABs.
Yeah, it's a great problem to have, right? Too many good players. It's never a bad thing when you look at your roster and you go, how are we going to fit all these good players on the field at one time?
I was going to add, there's the newcomer I'm really excited about. Cougars dipping into the promising guy who played for a smaller Northeast program for a second straight year, the same that got you Justin Murray, and bringing in Jake Reynes, who most recently played at Maine, will be playing his 5th college season this year. Last year hit 321 with 16 homers, stole 38 bases while playing a premium defensive position, shortstop. And well, I noted that stolen bases stat because really outside of Justin Murray, a lot of your top base stealers from last year are no longer here. And I think anyone defensively is going to be a step down from the guy who Reyes is replacing, Ian McMillan. But I really like what I've read about Reyes. I really like his career thing so far. And you see a lot of guys from their 4th to 5th season make this big jump. Like just again, your development when you're between 18 and 23 years old can be pretty large from like 1 year to the next. Unfortunately, the three of us, I think, have aged out of the physical development years of our lives. But like when you're in college and you're playing a 5th year, which hasn't always been the case, with COVID kind of throwing eligibility a little crazy here the last several years, I'm excited to see if this guy has like a big step in him. If nothing else, I think he'll give you a solid option at shortstop, where for the first time in a great number of years, you're not going to see Ian McMillan out there on opening day.
Yeah, and just one more name to just kind of throw out there because, as you read fall reports and previews of this team, big time college baseball guy, for anyone who doesn't know, Kendall Rogers is one of the top names in college baseball journalism. Alex Lopez, he seems very high on Alex Lopez. Alex Lopez hit 270. The stats don't jump out. 276 homers, 34 RBIs. But apparently in the scrimmage between Houston and Texas A&M, he was just absolutely out there killing it. So plays a lot of different positions, can pretty much go wherever you need to. So if he's not an everyday starter, should be interesting to just kind of, you don't have to fall back too much on a guy. You have a guy who can come in and still hit, be productive, and won't necessarily, he can fill in for anybody. Somebody gets banged up or somebody just needs a day. Look for Alex Lopez to be a depth guy who's going to come in and really just not have a massive fall off between him and the starter.
Yeah, he was a mostly every game starter the last couple seasons.
Yeah,
so I expect it to be the same this year.
Yeah. Sam, you mentioned Reyes coming in from Maine, likely to be the starting shortstop, but he's really he's, I think, the one that's getting the most headlines and the one I'm most excited about. But he's one of 3 guys that is coming to Houston after just hitting the absolute crap out of the ball in smaller conferences last year. Tristan Moore did so for New Orleans. Trey Jones did so for A&M Corpus. Those are 2 guys that are coming in after putting some pretty good numbers up in smaller conferences, and guys that are kind of veterans and you think, might have the tools to do some impressive stuff at the higher level. And then you've got a trio of guys coming in who played smaller roles for SEC teams. Harold Cole coming from Arkansas, Jonathan French coming from South Carolina by way of Clemson, and then Hudson Sapp coming in from Ole Miss. 3 guys that may be, ready to step into bigger roles after coming out of what is, just clearly the best conference in college baseball. And then a couple other names that I'm interested in. Freshman Ace Reese is someone that D1 baseball has been talking up quite a bit in some of their reports. You don't get too many freshman hitters. Would love to see, if there's anyone that's able to come in and hit right away, get some ABs as a freshman. Maybe that's Reese. And then Joey Craig, who hit 18 homers at the JUCO level last year. The D1 baseball fall report said he looks real good defensively playing center field. So if you got a, solid defensive center fielder that can hit with some pop, you don't hate that for sure. So,
right.
Even if none of the other returnees or newcomers that didn't pop up on my radar, even if none of them pan out, like we literally just mentioned 13 guys that like I wouldn't bat an eye at them like being in the starting lineup for this team, being a good, a decent to good or very good starting player for a Big 12 team. So really excited to see who the staff runs out there and see what the Cougars can do, with the sticks this year.
2 quick points here. One off field, but Trey Jones did a electric guitar national anthem before a U of H men's basketball game. That was so good. I'm not just saying that because he's a baseball player. It was just like wow, that's pretty good. And I discovered he's a U of H baseball player. I was like, wow, this guy's good enough to play that kick-ass national anthem and be a Division I baseball player. That's really cool. I was just
what am I doing with my life?
Exactly, right? Can't do anything remotely.
He's great at 2 things. I'm good at 0. Damn it.
Right. Glad you mentioned Joey Craig, Dustin. Really excited to see how, that bad and 18 homers at a pretty high JUCO league, how that translates to D1 ball. And I think replacing kind of like Ian McMillan, a really plus defender in Drew Bianco, but maybe you could upgrade the bat a bit there.
Yeah, looking at the schedule, for non-conference schedule thoughts, I don't think we're going to spend a whole lot of time on it because if you're looking for interesting non-conference opportunities for Houston, it's pretty limited. In the staff's defense, there's only 4 non-conference series that they get to play with, and one of them is like that weird one in late April because there's an odd number of Big 12 teams, baseball teams, so you have to take a weird week off in the middle of the season. So And you're in a really good baseball conference now, so it's not like you want to kill yourself in non-conference too. But that being said, of Houston's 26 non-conference games this year, only 7 are against teams that finished in the top 100 of the RPI last year. You've got the three midweek games against Sam Houston, the Don Sanders Cup. They finished 74th. You've got the event at Minute Maid where Houston will play Vandy, Texas State, and Louisiana Lafayette, one elite team and 2 very solid ones. And then they'll have a Tuesday night in College Station in April against the Aggies. That's it. That is it for teams that were even in the top 100 of the RPI last year. So, that I'm really excited for that Minute Maid event. That's going to be a lot of fun. Definitely going to, keep a close eye on that one. And the chance to play Vandy is a really big opportunity, obviously, for Houston, especially in a major league park there. But yeah, other than that, it's going to be a whole lot of teams that you go, oh, please don't lose to this team. Please, this has got to be a W. This is the quad 3, quad 4 games that you just got to be, you got to be taken care of. So that's part of the, obviously they don't count as much as the weekend series do, but you got 3 weekend series against teams that you need to absolutely take care of business in those games as well. So going to be a lot of games that Houston just kind of gets tested in the sense of needing to be consistently good and consistently beating some of these lower teams. Because you're not going to get a whole lot of easy wins in the Big 12.
I was going to say, at one time this century, St. John's was a good Northeast baseball power. That has not been any time recent when I was doing my research in the show, which I was sad to find out.
Yeah, the non-conference, like you said, Dustin, not super exciting. But as we're about to talk, the conference is exciting. So.
Yeah, and when you look at the Big 12, TCU heading into the season is the clear front runner in the Big 12. They got all but one of the first place votes from coaches besides their own, and they are number 5 in the D1 baseball and perfect game preseason national polls, number 6 in Baseball America. The Longhorns are the expected number 2, both in terms of the conference poll and also the national polls would have them as the next highest ranked Big 12 team. I thought this was funny. Kansas State, Texas Tech, and Oklahoma State in the 3 major polls. Each of them is in 2 of them. And then each poll doesn't have one of the 3 of them, which that was kind of amusing to me. And then Oklahoma and West Virginia, not really getting top 25 love, but still projected regional teams. They are tied for 6th in the Big 12 preseason poll. Funny enough, Houston skips this entire tier of the conference. These are the 2 teams Houston doesn't play. Pretty clear cut, top 5. Houston plays all of them. You're pretty clear cut bottom 4. Houston plays all of them. You're one team that's kind of neck and neck with you. Houston plays them. The 2 teams that are just kind of right there, regional good, but not top 25 good, and Houston misses both of them. And then, Kansas, like I said, is, kind of right next with Houston in some order, depending on if you believe the conference poll or the D1 baseball poll. And then both of them picked comfortably ahead of the other 3 newcomers, as well as Baylor. So, I think kind of a fairly balanced schedule for Houston, I guess, in that you don't miss any of the top teams, but you don't miss any of the bottom teams either. And you get one more home series and you get on the road. So definitely an intriguing test for Houston in terms of you got a combination of some series that you kind of have to win against some of the lower teams. And then you're playing 3 games up in Fort Worth and you'd be, you'd bite someone's wrist off to get 1 win out of those 3.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's that was my big schedule. And it was just that stretch that you're alluding to there is brutal. That is going to be, I think, not saying you need to go 6-3 against or anything like that, but not getting just absolutely brutalized by that portion of the schedule, I think is going to really make or break your postseason chances. If you can actually steal a few wins from that, I think you actually start feeling pretty good about maybe having an at-large case, provided you took care of business prior to that.
I mean, yeah. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Dustin. Go.
The negative way to look at it is oh man, you got 5 series against really, really good teams. 2 of them on the road, 3 of them at home. Teams that are probably at least top 25 or borderline good. That's scary because that's a lot of good, tough teams. But then on the other side, it's all these opportunities where the losses aren't really going to hurt you that much, and the wins are going to look real good in your resume. Just the games that you just weren't getting any of in the American in the way that just kind of choked out your chances of ever making the NCAA postseason.
Yeah, it has a very volleyball vibe to it, right? Even though volleyball went super tough in the non-conference, it just has that feel that if you can take care of business non-conference and then look okay in conference play, you have an argument, depending on who your wins come up against, you have an argument that you could be a that you should be a tournament team.
I was going to say, and for what it's worth, you did do really well head to head last year against the one good AAC baseball team, ECU's perennial top 25 team. So not saying you're going to win 100% of your games against these level opponents like you did against ECU last year. I mean, generally the last few years, the head to head record against ECU isn't the best, but this team did have its moments against some better teams. Just like you said, Dustin, just not enough games where you had any chance of beating a quality opponent, and not a problem you'll have this year.
Yeah. In terms of the home away, I think it breaks down pretty even for Houston. The 4 teams that are picked comfortably beneath them, Houston has 2 of them at home, 2 of them on the road. The top 2 teams in the conference, TCU away, the Longhorns at home, and then that other top 25-ish teams. Houston gets Oklahoma State and Kansas State at home, Texas Tech away. So in terms of your home roads, but like I said, you get one more home series than road. So not mad about that. Like I said, would have loved to just happen to miss TCU, but again, that's the trade-off for getting, to play all 4 of Cincinnati, BYU, UCF, and Baylor. So excited to see Houston get into this. Again, it's not men's basketball where you're like, oh, we're going to go in and be a threat to win it, year one, but it's not soccer either where you're like, oh man, we're just holding on for dear life. It's somewhere in the middle
Right.
where you're gonna have the series where you go, oh man, we need to get at least 2 out of 3, and you're gonna have the series where you go, oh man, I'd love to get 1 out of 3. So should be a very compelling and fun Big 12 season for the Cougars.
Yeah, you have chances to build your resume.
Exactly.
Right. You get 2 out of 3 versus one of the top tier teams. You get to build your resume off that. So you get a lot of opportunities to build your resume. And to your point, Dustin, not many where it's going to absolutely tank your resume either.
So looking at opening weekend, the Cougars will be hosting Binghamton. The Bearcats are the preseason favorites in the America East Conference. They finished 29-23 last year overall, good for 218th in the RPI. The only 4 power conference teams that they played last year was their first 4 games of the season when they got swept at Clemson and then lost a midweeker at Wake Forest. Only one of those 4 losses was close. And, playing a team from that small of a conference, I think that's the result you're looking for. You're looking for a sweep with a maximum of 1 close game.
I was going to say, I think a decent early test for your pitching staff. They got some good hitters, smaller level team, but guys like Sam Haney, Evan Sullivan, Devin Bade, and I think maybe the scariest guy, their projected leadoff guy, Tommy Reifler, who hit just under 400 last year. I don't know how this team is going to get outs against the Cougars. There's a team with a just under 6 ERA in one of the lowest rated Division I conference last year, and they returned a lot of guys, but I don't know, man, returning production off a staff that almost has 6 ERA may necessarily be the best thing. I'm intrigued. They have a West Virginia transfer, Chris Sleeper, who had respectable numbers in 2 seasons at West Virginia. Didn't pitch a whole ton, but did pitch enough to be on the 2022 Big 12 all-freshman team. Kind of got lost in the shuffle last year. They returned last year's Friday starter, first-team all-conference guy Gabe Driscoll. I'm sure that's who we'll see in the opener, but yeah, I think a lot of different ways of saying the Cougs should probably win 3 of 3 in this one and win 3 of 3 mostly convincingly.
Yeah, if you don't win 3 of 3, it's not exactly the start you want for building that resume.
We're just like, no bad losses. Oh no, a bad loss. And you take one of these,
Yeah. Speaking of games that are in that, you don't want to have a bad loss here. Houston's first midweek game will be on Tuesday when they'll host Prairie View A&M. The Panthers were 290 out of 305 teams in the RPI last year. So that is the beginning and end of my preview of the Prairie View A&M Panthers.
Yep. I won't argue. Continue on, sir.
All right. We'll continue on to the other bat and ball sport, which is in season. That's Cougar softball, who this past weekend went 4-1 in a home event to open their season. Houston opened up the weekend dominating their inferior opponents, Colgate and Indiana State, for 3 games with a pair of run rule victories, followed by a 6-1 win. And then came the one real opponent in this event, Rutgers, who was decent but not regional good last year. Houston's first test of the year didn't go well. They lost 10-2. They scored 2 runs in the first inning and then got skunked the rest of the way. But Houston got a second shot at the Scarlet Knights, and it was one that I think was important for them to take advantage of, both from a confidence standpoint and also just from a resume standpoint. I think 2 losses against Rutgers makes the weekend an overall negative. You split, and I think it's kind of a push, essentially. And in that second chance, Houston struck in the first inning again, putting up a 4 spot behind a 3-run homer from Bree Cantu. But deja vu, Rutgers starts chipping away, getting back into it, run in the second, run in the third. But Taria Coleman crushed a huge 2-run home run in the bottom of the third to make it 6-2 Houston. The Cougars were able to ice it from there and won 6-3 to move to 4-1 on the year. Funny enough, this was the funniest thing for me, Bobby, that the pitching duo I expected to lead the way for Houston, Shelby Smith and Nicole Badeau, got hit hard by Rutgers in the loss on Saturday, and then Paris Lehman threw 6 strong innings after Tammy Waiters opened for Houston in the nice comeback win on Sunday.
Yeah, that first Rutgers game, I had it on while the men's basketball game was on. I kind of was double screening it, dual screening with my phone and whatnot. And you kind of got this feeling that once the floodgates kind of opened against Rutgers in that first game, it wasn't that like the team gave up, but it was definitely one of those where you could just kind of tell that they were like, all right, we've played a lot of softball. This isn't going well. And like the floodgates opened and we just got taken down by it. And then come back Sunday, let's battle back. And they did. So, like you said, losing 2 to Rutgers really kind of hurts your weekend, but getting that win against them on Sunday, when the time had moved, they moved it up because of the weather. So that takes you off the schedule that you were already kind of planning, all of that. And to come back and get that 6-3 win is massive.
Yeah, I mean, 4-1 isn't the best case scenario for this opening weekend, but it's not the worst either. I think considering this is a largely new roster outside of a handful of position players, I think a decent opening weekend. I've been burned by multiple U of H sports recently doing well early against inferior competition, so I won't go any further with that in terms of my endorsement, but I think things to be encouraged by. And like you guys have said, really, Paris Lehman deserves a shout out in this one. 6 innings of 2-run ball in the win, relieving Tamaya Waiters, and I think get out of that jam that she was like put into with Waiters walking the first 2 batters she faced. Really impressive. Also dealing with a rain delay in the middle of her 6 innings pitched. I think you can't overstate that. I mean, this weekend was the first time she had pitched since 2022. She missed all of last year, I believe, hurt. So I was really impressed by what I saw. Definitely your most effective pitcher in the circle. I mean, I know you had some questions about the fact that coming in, she's had one season of college experience and didn't have like the most sparkling numbers her freshman season at Nichols, but I think also worth reminding us, she was a true freshman that year. Like players develop, like players improve, and I think I'm not going to say, oh, we saw a future ace this weekend, but we saw a lot of good stuff. I thought she pounded the zone, which I think was really good. Like I think you're not going to see a lot of, for better or for worse, free base runners from her this year. Could translate something good, could translate into something not so good. I think we really don't know at this point, but really like what I saw early. A lot of standout hitters from opening weekend as well. Kennedy Thomas, an incredible 9 of 12 at the plate. Taria Coleman, as you'd expect, led the Cougars with 3 home runs, hit .455 for the weekend. 2 of your other expected impact transfers, Jasmine Rollin, Lair Butte, both hit really well. Also kind of like we expected, but I really wanted to single out freshman Michaela Nita, who I think we mentioned her in our preview. She hit .429 this weekend. I think somebody who's going to be a really exciting player here and definitely a lineup mainstay in the current season.
Yeah, I think this opening weekend went pretty much exactly as you thought. The bats are going to put up runs. Can the pitching hold on? And for those 5 games, the pitching held on.
So moving forward, Houston will be hosting the Houston Classic this coming weekend. The event was originally scheduled for Friday to Sunday, but games are being spread into Thursday to try to get as many games as possible in, with the expected bad weather coming to Houston over the weekend. The Cougs are currently scheduled to play 2 games each against Nicholls State and Northwestern State, who finished 157 and 160 in the RPI last year, and then single games against UTSA and UMass, both of whom finished well into the 200s. So, we'll see if Houston actually gets 6 games in like they currently have on the schedule, but this is even like a lighter, opponent group than you faced on opening weekend. There's not even a Rutgers caliber team. So, this is, one where I think if you get those 6 in, 5-1 is kind of has to be the minimum, and ideally really going 6-0.
Yeah, I was harsher. I said 6-0 or nothing in my notes. Like these are opponents you need to do what you did, which to their credit, you did not play around with your food when it came to Colgate Indiana State weekend number 1. That's good. Keep that going to weekend number 2, please. As many games as you can get in.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't have much to add over. This is one of those weekends where your resume can take a massive hit, but it doesn't do much for your resume.
All right. Well, more in-season sports. We've got women's hoops who in their game since our most recent episode lost 69-52 in their one game that was at Kansas on Thursday. Sam, you and I said we were going to come say something nice about this team if they kept it within 10. I guess we don't have to do that.
Sure don't. I feel like you can copy and paste my audio from one of our several previous episodes recapping a women's basketball conference game. I mean, the team kept it competitive for half, but once again, their opponent pulled away in the second. The team really struggled to make much happen offensively, and like I kind of predicted, a high-level opposing post player had a career night. All that happened at Allen Fieldhouse, though I guess you could say truthfully, the women's game was more competitive for a greater percentage of the on-court action than the men's game was, even if the final margin of defeat was slightly larger. That is my finding the tiniest, almost imperceptible to the human eye silver lining in the clouds. But yeah, the post player I kind of mentioned a moment ago, Tiana Jackson, 25 points, 15 boards, 9 blocks, guys. Not great. You're getting blocked 9 times. You're probably by one player. You're probably not going to be winning that basketball game. The Cougs shot 7 of 37 in the third and fourth quarters. KU shot 50% or better in 3 of 4 quarters. A stat I feel like I have said for like 6 different Big 12 conference games. I mean, I don't know what else to say, guys. The team is 0-5 in road Big 12 games. Really, only the OT loss at UCF has met any definition of competitive. I mean, it's discouraging. I think any coaching staff of this team would have struggled to win more than the 3 conference games we have right now in year 1 of the league. But to be at that point with a very veteran team and to not really be competitive in most of those 9 losses, I think that's the specific part that's discouraging to me right now. Like, Cincy right now is struggling. Cincy also has a first-year alumna of the program head coach who you could say right now in year 1 there, okay, maybe there's a long-term plan here. This is year 11 of this coach. What's the long-term plan here, guys? Right? 10 or 11?
Year 10.
Yeah.
Year 10, my bad.
Yeah,
Off on
this is
you.
year
Year 10. What's the plan here, guys?
Yeah, I mean, looking at the stats, look at this fourth quarter. Granted,
I prefer not to, Bobby. I did it earlier. I prefer
you
not
know,
to.
it was like a 12-point game at this point, but the Cougs went 2 of 18 from the field, 1 of 7 from 3, which means you went 1 of 11, 9% from inside the arc, 9%, 9%. That's
I told you I didn't want to look at it, Bobby. I told you.
It's fast break points 2, second chance points 20, points off turnovers 13. That's all you got. Meanwhile, your opponent shoots 50%. Just points off turnovers. They had 12. We had 13. Guys, we play a high pressure turnover focused.
The
brand
2
of
fast break
basketball.
points is throwing me. Like, how do we have only 2 fast break points given this?
I don't know. I don't know what to say, fellas. I don't know what to say.
Speaking of, I don't know what to say. Women's basketball is going to host the Longhorns on Wednesday, and it's another game in which a team wearing burnt orange is gonna kick Houston's butts. So
Valentine's Day massacre.
yeah, I don't know what to say about that one. Other than
You know what's going to be crazy though?
it's Valentine's Day, and I'm glad that I'm not going to be paying any attention to the game whatsoever.
You know what's going to happen though? This game's going to be close. Like, I don't know
Calling
why.
your shot here? You
I'm
put yourself
calling
on
a
record?
shot. I'm not saying we're going to win. But this one feels like something that, we hold them. When I say close, I mean it all relatively, right? I could see this being like a 10, 12-point game where Texas is kind of playing with their food in the fourth quarter, and we keep it closer than.
I feel like they played Cincy. It was like in the low teens in the final margin. I guess I could see something like that.
Yeah.
So last week I said if Houston keeps it within single digits against Kansas, I would say something nice about this program. Bobby, if they keep it within, I will even say 12 points against Texas. I will come back next week and say something nice about you since you made that prediction.
I'll co-sign. I'll jump on that too.
Now I already cheered my heart out for women's basketball, but I'm definitely doing it now. Look, my wife's got to work tomorrow, so I got nothing better to do than watch this game. Let's go, boys.
Expect updates because I will be taking my lovely significant other to the brand new Las Vegas strip Whataburger for a romantic dinner.
You guys gonna feed like honey barbecue chicken strip sandwiches to each other, like link your arms and like feed them to each
Cannot confirm or deny.
Cougar women's basketball will be back at home, or will be on the road, I should say, this weekend. On Saturday, they will be at Oklahoma State. I know Oklahoma State, not one of the better teams in the conference. Sam, any chance this is Houston's first Big 12 road win?
If this game was happening in Houston, I could probably make the case for the Cougars winning this one because Oak State has not been great away from Stillwater. They have some close losses that still make me think that this game was in Houston. It probably would not be a Cougar win. No, I am not predicting that for this one. They don't have the greatest looking record. They're 11-12 overall, 4-8 in conference play, but they're also top 60 in net. And again, frankly, I wouldn't be wild about the Cougs' chances in Houston because they've been competitive in basically all of their league losses. They just had an absolute heartbreaker they dropped over the weekend at number 7 K-State. If U of H was 4-8 right now in league play, guys, kind of like we were talking about earlier, but most of those losses were competitive, I really do think you'd hear a different tone from the three of us about this season when we came back here to talk about this team. And I think the individual matchup that's really tamping down my optimism is stop me if it sounds familiar, OSU has a really good post player that I am positive is going to have a career night against us. In this case, it's junior Hannah Guster, a 6'5" player, junior currently averaging, I said that twice, 14.6 points per game. Again, if recent history is any indicator, she will probably beat her season average. Guys, this was a weird fact about this game that threw me off. Do you realize this is the first time a U of H team is traveling to Stillwater for a Big 12 sporting event this year? I had to double check it, but I mean, the football game was in Houston. The soccer teams didn't play. They don't sponsor volleyball. The men's basketball game was in Houston. It's the first time. Right. Do not think we'll be commemorating that with a win, unfortunately, as much as I would like to be wrong about that fact.
Yep.
Yeah. Seems more than fair, honestly. And as we are well into this episode, I think we'll just go ahead and leave that there and keep it moving as we got 3 more sports to get in here. So let's move right along to Cougar Track and Field, which this past weekend hosted the Howie Ryan Invitational, as well as sending athletes to a couple of other events. And Christian Sampe rebroke his school record in the pole vault once again for I think the second or third time this year, clearing 18 feet 5 1/4 inches. Out at the Don Kirby Invitational in Albuquerque. That moved him up to number 3 in the country on the year. And then Houston got good value for its money in Boston. They sent 2 athletes to the David Henry Valentine Invitational and both won their events and set program records for U of H. Sydney Townsend in the 400 meters, Claire Meyer in the 5,000 meters. Something in that Boston air just makes you run fast or something, I guess. And then back in Houston, David Ajama had his best mark as a Cougar in the triple jump at 51 feet, 11 1/4 inches, good for 19th in the country. So kind of just outside of that top 16 that you want to hit in indoors in order to get yourself qualified for nationals. So that is Houston's second to last weekend of regular season indoor track and field. They'll have athletes competing at the I just realized I put it in my notes as Air Forced, F-O-R-S-T. That's not a word. Air Force Last Chance and the LSU Twilight meets this coming weekend before Big 12 Indoor Championships the weekend after that. So I don't know if you just saw, but the Cougar men's track and field debuted at number 24 in the team rankings this past week after some more impressive performances from guys like Sampe and Ajama. So excited to finish up the regular season and ready to get into Houston's first ever Big 12 championship in a couple of weeks. And then next up, Bobby, I believe you're gonna give us the latest update on some in progress Cougar golf events.
Yeah, so we have some Cougar golf, like you said, they are in the middle of their events, but we pretty much know what's about to happen just based on where the Cougars stand currently. I'm going to start with the men's tournament, men's team. They're actually not participating as a team in a couple of events. They sent players to different events in the Houston area. You got one in Humble at the Golf Club of Houston called the Houston Classic, which isn't hosted by U of H. It's hosted by some, what was it? It's some random Oklahoma college is like hosting the event here. It was very weird. But you have one there, and then you have the Bentwater Intercollegiate in Montgomery. Some smaller events. Like I said, the Cougars aren't sending any as a team. They're not going. They sent a bunch of individuals. Figure it's close to Houston. Go get some of your lower end players not lower end, but some of your younger players, some of the guys who you don't think are going to be in your starting five heading into the season. A little bit of tournament experience. Over at the Houston Classic, you have Hudson Weibel, and Brian Hiskey, who are both T14 at +7, which is fine. They're playing some schools that aren't the biggest that you've heard of. And Jacob Barrow is +5. He's T8 in that event as well. If this were a team event, Cougs would probably be doing pretty well right now, but you would expect them to playing teams like Midwestern State, Central Oklahoma, Henderson State, Mississippi College, Oklahoma Christian, West Texas A&M. You would hope Houston is winning that event. But again, they didn't send anyone as a player. And then over in Montgomery, you have Grant Doggett. He's +6, T17. Maybe a little bit lower than you would want. Again, not a team competition, but doing fine. Nothing too exciting since it's not the team, and that's kind of how conference goes and things like that. That being said, we do have women's golf, and they are participating in their first tournament of the year, and it's kind of been a tough week for the Lady Cougs in the Bahamas. They are getting to travel to Nassau for this tournament. They plan it every year. Currently, they are 8th out of 11 teams in this tournament. Freshman Malin Kim is leading the Cougs through 2 rounds. We have one more round to go. The big surprise, though, is Moa went out and shot a 79 and a 78, much higher than you typically see from her. So very uncharacteristic. One thing I talked about in the preseason preview was how the team can go really low, but the next round will go very high at times. And this tournament is the perfect example of that. Not that we like calling players out, but just for an example, Natalie St. Germain posted a 72, followed it up the next day with an 80. You can kind of get that 72 and an 80 down to a 74 and a 74, or a 75 and a 75, right? We can go a little bit higher on one day if that means we can lower the high end a little bit. Again, not the best tournament for the Lady Cougs, but I'm not selling my stock. Still a lot to look forward to with the team. Now, one thing I do want to complain about is it's usually pretty easy to find golf stats through a wonderful website called golfstat.com. They track the tournaments. They do all that. You can preview other tournaments. This new system, you click on the upcoming tournament, which I wanted to do for the men's team. I have no idea who's playing in this tournament. I have no idea who's playing in the Border Olympics right now. It's impossible to find. I've looked in like 3 different places. I would love to give you a preview about the Cougars next tournament that they're hosting, but you click on the Border preview, you click on the Border Olympics, and you pretty much get nothing out of it. So just a wonderful, wonderful spike mark production when the NCAA changed over from GolfStat. They really kind of screwed things up on that. So that's neither here nor there.
No, but GolfStat's awesome. Like fully, like it is like it is like you look at it, it's like it reminds you kind of the 1990s internet. But it also gives you like easy, like, oh, how these players do on par threes, like a quick breakdown of how each team is doing, like just extremely like not fixing a real problem by getting rid of GolfStat. Yeah.
So just it was such a terrible move, and it was all because coaches didn't know how GolfStat established their rankings, and it wasn't as clear as they wanted it to be. So it was just bad. So that's just my little rant. Sorry. There you go. I will stop there. Just good job, NCAA. You did a great job.
And then finally, Sam, Cougar tennis did not have the week we were hoping for. I think it's safe to say.
Cougar tennis got a lot of exercise this past weekend, but I mean, I'm sorry off the joke. It's rough. It's probably the roughest weekend of Cougar tennis like since we've done a podcast you're talking about. Like lost to UTRGV for the first time since those programs ever competed head to head. I looked at the history, guys. Not just that this was the first loss in the entirety of Helena Bezovic's tenure at U of H, which dates back to 2018. You've played UTRGV almost every year. Like I wouldn't go so far as to say they're an annual play. I think there's like a year or two in there that you can go head to head, but just about every season you have faced UTRGV. I correct what I said earlier, guys. In the entirety of those head-to-heads, U of H had given up 4 points total to UTRGV's tennis program prior to last Friday's head-to-head, where you lost 4-3. And what kills me, it wasn't one of those things where you came out a little cold, lost the doubles point, and just kind of had to play from behind. You won the doubles point. You actually you won all 3 doubles matches, so you swept that. I actually watched a little bit of it, waiting for softball to start in the late morning out here before the Cougs took on Colgate in softball, and looked pretty good. And then promptly lost 4 of your 6 singles matches. And say what you will about this program, the past several seasons, this was a program that you didn't have issues with the UTRGVs in the schedule. It would be like, oh, we beat them 6-1. Dustin and I would say 90 seconds to 3 minutes about that specific game, and kind of like, okay, and in the back of your mind, it's okay, well, when this team faces maybe the tougher opponents, probably not going to go so hot. It's not going so hot right now against like the lowest rated teams in the schedule. It doesn't really make sense. I mean, you lost also, keep with the on-court action for a second. You lost 4-2 to Louisiana Tech, which is a bit less surprising. I was allowing myself a bit of hope in that one. I got moved to Monday for rain. I saw an update while I was at work, though. The team took the doubles point. I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. Like, maybe you'll steal something there. Nope. Lost 4 of the 5 singles matches before, they called it because U of H had no mathematic way of getting back in this one. So I would just say that result may be not as surprising, a little disappointing, but just losing UTRGV, almost losing to ULA in the opener, losing to a not that great UNT team in Denton. I don't know if this team has double-digit wins in them this year. And it's hard to explain because this isn't a situation where, okay, well, you have a lot of new faces. Guys, you have precisely one new player regularly seeing action, Nina Scorch. Everyone else has been in this program just about multiple years. Athletes who actually weren't bad against like the middle of the American competition or against the the non-conference opponents that you expect to beat. And I know tennis can be kind of an individual sport, can be kind of a lonely sport, but it's hard to explain. And I thought I could make a pretty decent case, Dustin, when we previewed them a couple episodes ago, that, hey, this might not be the worst team in the Big 12. Hate to say it, after 4 matches, that dead last in the Big 12 ranking looks pretty dead on, and I have a hard time. Maybe, again, could turn it around, but have a hard time seeing it get better before it gets a lot worse.
It is so baffling with it being so many of the same players as last year. Like you said, this team not great last year, but not this bad at least. And a week ago, I think, my biggest concern for Houston having a team finish last in the Big 12 might have been softball. And that was even with me making an argument that I at least somewhat believe that they won't finish last. But tennis might be grabbing that mantle and going, no, we're gonna be the one that is the first Houston team to ever finish last place in the Big 12 in something.
Yeah, I'd love to be wrong, but just again, don't see it and don't have an easy explanation for it. Like, you have a bunch of new players, and I don't know, maybe it forces a change that needed to happen. As much as Lena Bezovic has done a solid job here the past several seasons, because I kind of penciled this little early stretch in as like a 3-1, 4-0, 3-1 at the absolute worst, and you're 1-3 with a very narrow margin of win for that one. So wish I was ending the episode on a more happy note, but I think that's just the reality with this program. And I think we'll end it here if you guys don't mind.
Nope.
Let's end it right here. And on our way out, going to give a big thank you to our Scott and Holman podcast Patreon supporters for your continuing ongoing support of the work that we are doing every week to bring you the latest, greatest Cougar news. If you appreciate this podcast, you feel like you can afford $5 a month, we'd love for you to go to patreon.com/shpodcast. You can sign up, do us a solid. That'd be very much appreciated. If you'd like to say hi, you can email us, shpodcast@gmail.com. You can tweet at us at shpodcast. You can blue sky at us at podcast.bsky.social. That's going to be it for us. If you made it all the way to the end, you are an absolute rock star. And as always,
go Cougs.
Go Cougs.
Vamos los Cougs.
Go Cougs.
Go Cougs.
All right. Go Cougs. Let's go.